We're still talking in terms of soliciting business and practices that you might use as an agent in the field to get business. And so these words are just simply going to be flashcard. They're vocabulary words for you, okay? So let's put some of those in order. We're now getting ready to talk about antitrust laws. And the first one that comes up is no price fixing. As agents, you should not participate in price fixing. Morgan, was that part of your plan? Were you already thinking about how to get involved in price fixing schemes? Then don't, because it would be illegal. It's actually a violation of a federal law. Okay. Now you say you would never do it, but listen, it's more simple than what you think it is. Okay. When we talk about price fixing, listen. You guys, as agents, you're going to get around, you're going to get together. Matter of fact, in my last class, I have people that are trying to figure out how to reconnect because after class they lost each other. They want to network in the field and things like that. You're going to do the same. You're nice people. You will want to find each other after you pass the exam. And you will talk about things at your firm, good, bad, indifferent. You're going to share this type stuff. You'll probably talk about splits and things like that. Knock yourself go for it. But here's what you're not going to say. Sitting around at lunch one day, you're not going to say something like, look, BurgerFi burgers are going up. We need to start charging higher commission, so I'm going to start charging 7% on listing fees. Why don't you spread the word in your company as well, and we'll all start charging 7% as listings, okay? Now, I know you might think, I'm just a small person in this field. What's it going to hurt for me to have this conversation with another agent in the field? But it's price fixing, okay? I know that you don't think about it, but technically that's what you're doing, is you're trying to set some type of standard for the industry. It's illegal. Don't talk about stuff like that, okay? Now, let's talk about what you might want to see, or what you might see for test purposes. You go in to do a listing presentation, and how this would apply. You go in to do a listing presentation, so you're sitting there with the seller. Melissa, you're the seller, and here's the conversation that happens. I typically list properties at 6%. Now Melissa's the seller, and here's what she says to me. You are the third one that's been in here today and said 6%. What's the deal with that? Let's talk about what my appropriate answers can be. Well, Melissa, that's pretty much standard for the industry. Appropriate or not? Highly inappropriate, because what have I just suggested to her? That there is a set price. Okay? Could I say this? Well, Melissa, my company policy is 6%. Can I say that? Assuming that's true. I mean, don't lie. But assuming that that is true, you can say that. Because if she doesn't like my company policy, what can she do? Go to another company. Okay? Price fixing. You going to nail that one on the exam? Bam! That should be automatic for you. Also, do not participate in a group boycott. If you don't like somebody, don't use them. Do not stand up at an office meeting and try to get others to not use them. That attorney did not give me great service. Let's all get together and not use him and send him a note saying why we're not using him so he'll lower his prices or whatever it is. Wrong answer. You don't want to use them, don't use them. But don't try to foment a boycott against this. Now, let me give you an example of it. Actually, this is realistic. One of the things that happened years ago, a company comes to town. They take listings in our MLS. I'm going to try to avoid using words like standard, okay? But I can tell you that a lot of buyer's agents in this area make somewhere between 2.4 and 3%, all right? Since I'm on film, I'm not going to tell you how that came about, but it's not uncommon for it to see that. A firm comes to town and they offer buyer's agents $1. You bring me your buyer, we will pay you, we will split our commission and give you $1. All right? Do you know how happy that made buyer's agents in this area? Not at all happy. Not at all happy, because they would used to get between 2.4 and 3%, right? So a lot of the buyer's agents took matters into their own hand. Here's what we're going to do. Actually, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to do what? Show their listings. Show their listings. Okay? When they started putting the word out, that then became a boycott. Highly illegal, and by the way, not very good for your client as well, because they weren't thinking in terms of what was best for the client. They were thinking in terms of what's best for whom? The agent. by the way, as we talk about agency agreements a little bit later, we will show you how to deal with this. You have a contract with your buyer that says, yes, I expect to get paid from the seller side. However, if the seller doesn't pay me, I expect to get paid by you, and here's how much. Okay, you'll see that when we go over the buyer agency agreement. Are you okay? No group boycotts, right? Don't do it.
What would be an example of even sellers don't pay?
Say again, if the sellers don't pay, well,
What would be an example?
in our buyer,
Sellers don't pay.
oh, well, I'll give you an easy example. For sale by owners. For sale by owners are under no obligation to pay a buyer's agent, right? So normally what I do is I go to the seller as a buyer's agent and I try to negotiate a commission with them. But if not, I go back to my buyer and say, listen, they're not paying. And you said in the buyer agency agreement that you would pay me, I'm just making this number up, 2.5%. So he's not paying. So will you pay me if you buy this house? Okay? And because this will become more apparent when you see the written buyer agency agreement, okay? Group allocation of markets. This is interesting from this standpoint. Group allocation of markets. Real estate agents should not enter into agreements that look like this. Hey, our firm will cover area 11. Y'all stay out of it. If you stay out of area 11, we will stay out of area 13. All right? What you're doing is allocating markets, and that is illegal because buyers are not exposed to all the potential options that are available. It's interesting that I don't really worry about it that much in our industry. What I find out about real estate agents is they will cross lines if it means making a commission somewhere. So I don't perceive this to be a problem. So I just need you to recognize this. You stay out of our market, we'll stay out of yours. It has the same effect as price fixing, doesn't it? Okay. There are severe penalties associated with these. We don't need to get into a whole lot of detail on that. I want you to notice that bullet point that's in red there. It's red, it's important, and here's what we're telling you. Real estate commissions are, in fact, negotiable, but I don't want you to overread in that. When you come back from a seller and you go in and talk to your broker in charge, and you say, well, you know, I ended up taking the listing at 4.5%. Well, if your company has a policy of 6%, what we mean by commissions are negotiable is you can negotiate to the extent that your firm allows you to negotiate. If they don't allow you to take a listing below 6%, now you're breaking firm policy. You're not breaking the law by taking a lower listing, but you might be breaking your firm policy, okay? Commissions are negotiable. Seller, go out and interview as many companies as you want to, and if commission's important to you, you make your best decision based on that. My policy is I list at 6%. Okay? Questions or comments on any of those? That wasn't hard, was it? No. That was easy, and you're going to be tested, so make sure you get it right. All right, another important slide. Now, another thing that you want to watch out for questions in this chapter, there is a difference between when an agent earns his compensation versus when an agent gets paid. When I go over the listing agreement with you, I will show you in detail what you have to do to earn compensation. And then I'll say, you know, you're typically paid at the settlement table, closing table, right? When you earn and when you get paid are usually two different issues. What are we talking about right here? Broker's entitlement to a commission. To earn compensation, you first of all must have an active real estate license. We haven't talked a lot about it yet, although Appendix A, if you start reading Appendix A, you have seen this. You should underline the word active in actively licensed. In other words, it's not enough to be licensed. Your license has to be on active status for you to be able to earn compensation. As provisional brokers, you must have a what if you're going to be active? A broker in charge. And then later we will tell you the other things that you need to do to stay active, such as taking post-license classes and CE classes, right? You must be actively licensed to earn compensation. You must be actively employed by a principal. You have a client that you are working with. But that's where this is talking about agency agreements in generically. So that's where you have a buyer agency agreement or a listing agreement. You have an employment agreement with your client. Agency agreements are nothing but employment contracts. Okay? Valid written agency agreement sounds like it says something similar. You must produce a ready, willing, and able buyer. That actually should say broker's entitlement to a commission as a listing agent, if it's going to get that specific. You produce a ready, willing, and able buyer on terms acceptable to the seller. What does that mean? Here's the deal. I take a listing, $200,000. The seller agrees, $200,000 is what we're listing for, 6% commission, okay? The seller signs it, all other terms spelled out. I bring the seller a buyer who offers $200,000 cash, no contingencies, okay? Does the seller have to accept it? The seller does not have to accept it, but have I earned my compensation? Because I brought a what? Ready, willing, and able buyer at the terms of the contract. And then later, when I show this to you in the actual listing agreement itself, you will see the second part of the provision that says, or at terms acceptable to the seller. So here's the deal. The buyer offered, it was on the market for $200,000. The buyer offered $195,000, and the seller said, yes, I will take that. And they took it and they agreed to it in writing contract. Have I still earned my compensation? Yes, because I brought a ready, willing, and able buyer at the terms of the listing agreement or at terms acceptable by the seller. There are two conditions where you earn your compensation. And then provisional brokers can only be paid directly by their employee broker. You will see this when you start reading the Appendix A. This is State Law 93A6-5. Provisional brokers can only be paid by their broker in charge or by the firm that employs you. Provisional brokers can never be paid directly. Even if the broker in charge gives permission, hey, just go ahead and pay them directly, you can't do it. It has to go through your broker in charge. We will beat that to death at a later point. Okay. Now we're entering into a new outline section that is equally as simple as what we just talked about. Having said that, this is specific to real estate. There's no reason you would have ever studied this before outside of real estate. So be specific, but be simple, and make sure you know these terms. What we're talking about are the type of listing agreements that you can use. Here actually comes the important point. If you're working for the seller, you must have a listing agreement in writing at the formation of the relationship. Does that sound familiar? It's Real Estate Commission Rule 104, right? Okay. Well, here's what's interesting about it. The Commission doesn't tell you what type of listing agreement that you have to have. They simply say that you have to have one before you go to work for a seller. So let's talk about the listing agreements that are possible. One type of listing agreement is an open listing agreement. In an open listing agreement, notice the first bullet point there. In an open listing agreement, there can be multiple agents. In an open listing agreement, the seller will only pay the agent who procures the buyer. In an open listing agreement, the seller will only pay the agent who procures the buyer. These are extraordinarily rare. These are extraordinarily rare. Okay, let me talk to you about what you're looking at. And I've already told you they're rare. You're not going to take them in this area. I think I've taken one in 25 years. Okay. In an open listing agreement, here's the deal. The seller runs into you and they say, hey Chris, you have a real estate license, right? Yeah. Will you come list my house? So I go running back to my office, I grab a sign, I grab all types of paperwork for them to fill out, and I say, listen guys, if I take this listing here, you're going to give me 6 months to list the property, I'll bring a buyer, blah, blah, blah. And the seller said, well, you misunderstood what I'm saying. What I'm telling you is, any agent who walks by here today, I'm going to tell them if they want to list my property, they can. Now, each one of us will have to have a written listing agreement, right? But there's nothing exclusive about an open listing agreement. Who am I competing? To get a commission in an open listing agreement as an agent, who am I competing against? Everybody. Every agent out there can get the exact same deal I have if you want it. All right? You know who else I'm competing against? The seller. The seller. What if the seller sells it by himself? I get nothing, right? Every once in a while you'll see pictures of these. We don't do it around here about that much, but you'll see pictures from time to time of a yard and it has a bunch of listing signs in it, a bunch of different agents in it, and that they have an open listing agreement is what it amounts to. Do you have to have a written agreement though? Yes. Because you are their agent. It's weird terms, but you do have to have a listing agreement if you're going to work for this seller. Just like every agent who wants to get paid, who wants to try to procure a buyer, they all would enter into an open listing agreement with the seller. Now, let's talk about why you don't see many of these. First of all, our MLS, I don't think even allows open listings, because do you recognize that several people would have the same house listed? Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, okay? How much money, agent, are you going to spend marketing this house if you have an open listing agreement? And I'm not. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I go out and spend some marketing dollars, some time and effort, and then you sell the house and I get nothing, okay? So from that standpoint, it's really not advantageous to the agent, nor the seller, for that matter. I'm just not going to spend any money marketing the house. Is it legal? Yeah. Am I going to do it? Probably not. I'll tell you real quickly the one open listing agreement that I've ever had. Years ago, when I got my license, you know, when you're young and you're in the field, you want listings because you want your signs out. You want people seeing it, making phone calls, whatever. You go to your friends and family. I had a friend that had a piece of property that he wanted to sell. It was in Middlesex, North Carolina. Do y'all even know where Middlesex? Anybody know where Middlesex, North Carolina is? I've been there and I still don't know where it is. It's somewhere on the way to the Zebulon or Pass, best I can remember. So anyway, he has this piece of property that he wants to sell. So I ride and ride and ride and ride. And eventually I get to Middlesex. I find the property. Now keep in mind, this is before GPS, right? So I go out there, I list the property. He signs all the paperwork. He signs an exclusive right to represent. So, okay, so I have this listed for 6 months. I have this piece of property listed. During the 6 months I had this piece of property, I got 3 phone calls on my sign. 2 people were lost, actually. They saw my sign and they're like, well, you must know where I am because your sign's here. The third guy, I think, was just mowing the grass in the area or something. He knocked it down and broke the sign, so he called and let me know that. So anyway, at the end of 6 months, literally, I did not sell the property, okay? And I called my friend up and said, do you want me to relist it? And I'm like, I hope he says no, I hope he says no, I hope he says no. So anyway, he says, no, here's what he tells me. He said, I'm thinking about developing this property. I'm like, you go ahead. You know, Middlesex, North Carolina, it needs some more developments like yours. You knock yourself out if that's what you want to do. So anyway, he doesn't want to list with me, but he comes up with this plan. Here's what his plan is. Well, why don't you leave your sign up? And if someone calls you on the sign, then if you'll bring them to me, I will absolutely pay you commission on that. Can I leave my sign on a property that I do not have a listing agreement on?
No.
No. So he says leave the sign there. I know that to leave the sign there, I have to have a listing agreement. He doesn't want an exclusive right to sell a listing agreement. What we ultimately compromised on was an open listing agreement. And that way I didn't have to drive all the way back to Middlesex and pick my sign up. I could leave it there. It might still be there today for all I know. But that's the only time I've ever used an open listing agreement. It didn't sell, I didn't get paid. But if it did sell during the time I had the listing, he would have paid me because I had a contract that said so. Yeah, right.
So there is an end date on an open listing agreement?
Yeah. Why is there an end date on that open listing agreement? Because there has to be. That's a perfect answer right there. Because there has to be. And ultimately, we can enter into renewals, but I can't make it automatically renewal. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Only the person who sells gets paid, but remember that person that does sell had to have a agency agreement. There's a great end of chapter question about open listing, and it's probably about the extent of anything you need to know in regards to open listing agreements. Okay. So then we have another one that's called, remember, the commission doesn't care which one you use, you just have to have one. Here's another one that you could have, an exclusive agency listing. Exclusive agency listing. Under an exclusive agency listing, only one agent will list this property. Okay? Only one agent will list this property. That sounds pretty good. But here's the problem. Under an exclusive agency agreement, the seller can compete against you. Okay? If the seller sells it himself, Ebony, what's going to happen? I don't get compensation. So only one agent will list the property, and here's what's going to happen. If I list the property and one of you guys brings a buyer, I'll get paid. I'll split my commission with you. Very similar to the way it always works, right? But if the seller walks next door and sells it to his neighbor, I get nothing under an exclusive agency listing. So let me ask you again. How much money are you going to spend marketing a property knowing that the seller can sell it to his brother-in-law and you get nothing? Yeah, it's gonna be hard to justify spending a lot of money, isn't it? Okay? Let's see, only one agent, broker receives commission, blah, blah, blah. Seller retains the right to sell without. I feel okay about those bullet points. You feel good about those? Okay, cool. Can I flip to the next page? Some of you are still writing. Vic, did you get what you need? Okay. Finally, there is what we refer to as an exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Exclusive right to sell. Now, the only thing that's hard in this little section right here is remembering the difference between exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell. Okay? These words are not used vaguely. They mean specific things. Exclusive right to sell. Here's the deal. The listing agent is getting paid regardless where the buyer comes from, as long as it happens during the term of the listing agreement. Under exclusive right to sell listing agreement, the agent's getting paid regardless of where the buyer comes from. These are by far the most common that you're going to see in the MLS. Okay? Multiple listing services. And do you understand why I would say that this is best not only for agent, clearly it's best for agent, right? But it's also best for the seller in a lot of ways. Why is it best for the seller to have an exclusive right to sell?
Because then you're going to be open to all of the possible.
You're using your time, your effort, your money, marketing this property, right? Because the seller has bought into me, I can spend some time, money, and effort trying to market this property and give them the greatest exposure possible, okay? So exclusive right to sell, there's one authorized agent. Hey, listen, if you guys bring a buyer, I'll take my commission, I'll split it, I'll give you a part of it, but I am going to sell this property. You know what? If the seller walks next door and sells it to his neighbor, I get paid anyway. Okay? Exclusive right to sell. You feel good about those? Notice all the red that you saw here. I don't think independently they are a problem topic. I think taken together they're a problem topic. You're probably going to get one question on this. And if you didn't see it enough in the lecture, we made you a little chart right here that you can study as well. Remember, it comes out better in color than it does in black and white on the copies that we made for you. But you have copies of these, so make sure you go back and take a look at this. I consider this to be a cheap point on the exam. Make sure you get it right, okay? Not exactly a listing agreement, but matter of fact, do yourself a favor on this. Just go ahead and underline or highlight the last bullet point down there. Protection agreements. These most often come up when you're dealing with a for sale by owner. Would anybody like to take that vague introduction and tell me when you might use a protection agreement or what a protection agreement is all about? Ariel, were you volunteering or are you just trying to read?
I'm trying to read.
Okay. Wimps, nobody's volunteering. It is exactly what it says it is. Think about the for sale by owner. I bring a buyer to a for sale by owner. He doesn't owe me anything, does he? The for sale by owner, right? So what I do is I walk up and knock on his door and say, listen, I have a buyer who wants to see your property. Will you pay me? Well, what's the for sale by owner going to say? Yes, no, maybe. Okay? He may say no. And if the for sale by owner says no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk out to my buyer and say, well, he's not going to pay me. Will you pay me? That's where you're really going to hope that you have a written buyer agency agreement, where the buyer has already said that you deserve at least a certain amount of compensation. If it's not coming from the seller, he'll pay you. Okay? But if you're under a verbal, watch this. If you're under a verbal buyer agency agreement and you walk up to the for sale by owner and say, will you pay me? And she says no. And I walk back to the buyer and say, well, will you pay me? And she says no. I'm in a mess. I'm in a mess. And I got to be honest with you. I'm not going to show the buyer this house. Like, you're under no obligation to show a property that there's no compensation, that you don't have an agency agreement on. And so it's not like I want to go show them the property knowing I'm not going to get paid. But I can't stop her from coming back at the end of the day and seeing that because I don't have an exclusive agency agreement, right? So the protection agreements, and hey, listen, we have a form for this that literally says, this time say yes, Virginia. This seller, will you pay me if I bring a buyer? Yes, okay. Here's a form. This form, I am not asking you if I can be your agent. I am asking you if you will pay me if that person right there buys the house. Literally to the extent I'm putting that person's name in here, okay? Will you pay me how much? Ooh, here comes a good question. You think I need to go over the working real estate agent brochure with her? Yeah. Yeah, the fact of the matter is you're going to go over the working real estate agent brochure with every buyer, with every seller, including a for sale by owner. As a matter of fact, that for sale by owner, I often think it's more important. Because guess what? The public doesn't understand this. She just agreed to write me a check when she pays the house, when I sell the house. Do you think she might start feeling like I work for her if she's writing me a check? But we know because you're in this class, that who pays you doesn't determine who you work for. What determines who you work for? Agency agreements. Agency agreements. My agency agreements with the buyer. Seller. I'm going over agency to let you know how agency works in North Carolina, and I'm telling you, please understand that I work for that buyer, and then will you sign this document saying you'll pay me, but I don't work for you. The form that we have that does this on the second page of the form, it actually has in a big block. Seller, make sure you've gone over the working real estate agent brochure before you sign this form. Okay? That important. That important. You understand the protection agreement? We used to, I used to get this sometime in commercial as well. When we had our retail store, we would often get people that would call us up, commercial brokers. They would often call us up and say, are you interested in selling your property? And I'd say, well, I haven't really thought about it, but sure, I'd be glad to entertain an offer if you wanted to bring someone. So what they would do is they would basically come over and have us sign some type of protection agreement form, just saying their buyer bought the property. They weren't asking to list my property. They just saying, well, you pay me if I bring somebody. It happens in commercial on a fairly regular basis. You feel okay about that? All right. Okay, now we have a little bit of a bind here. We have a little bit of a bind.
What's the last one you mentioned?
Oh, I'm sorry. For sale by owner, yeah. I forget every once in a while. In this class, I will often use buzzwords, FISBO, okay, for sale by owner. Stop me if you don't recognize these words and ask what they mean, because they'll be extraordinarily important. When we get later to valuation, I'll use the word comp or comparables, and I just do it because that's what's familiar with me. It's absolutely fair for you to stop me and say, what the heck did you just say? Okay, FISBO, for sale by owner. Okay. Here's the dilemma that we're getting ready to get into, but it actually doesn't scare me. We're going to walk through a listing, agreement. This normally takes me an hour to do, and I have told you that we're going to break a little bit early because of the weather. However, it might actually be a benefit for you, and here's why. Listen to me talk about a listing agreement for an hour is hard. Maybe 2 30-minute sections will actually be easier. So I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with my syllabus here just to stay on track. What I want you to do is I need you to turn in your book to the page that the exclusive right to sell listing agreement is on. I expect it's going to be 192. 192. 192. On page 192, you are looking at the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Now, does the Real Estate Commission require us to use this form? Emphasis on this form? The answer is no. The Real Estate Commission requires us to have a written agency agreement. The Real Estate Commission says this is a good one, okay? But remember, you're not required to use this. Look down on the bottom of the page, in the bottom left-hand corner. Do you see a big R in the bottom left-hand corner? That big R stands for the Realtor Association. These forms are actually drafted by the Realtor Association. The Real Estate Commission looks at them and says, they look good to us. In other words, test question. Does the Real Estate Commission produce our contract forms?
No.
They absolutely do not. They absolutely do not. They make rules. Well, what were the rules? Agency agreements have to be in writing, they have to start date, end date, blah, blah, blah. They make rules. The Association of Realtors creates these forms, and if you're a realtor, you can use them. All right? You can certainly use a different type of form. It just has to meet agency rules. Okay. Exclusive right to sell listing agreement. We already know why this is important, right? Because there are 3 types of listing agreements. This is by far the most common you're going to see in the MLS. When you are studying agreements in this book, I would highly recommend that you study the agreements in relationship to something that we have talked about in this class. You are not going to memorize that 9 or 10-page form right there, okay? So relate it back to something we talked about in class. That's the way you study, okay? So let's look at the first paragraph. In the first paragraph, are we introducing the parties to the listing agreement? Yes? All right, be careful. Right here, I'm going to ask you a question. Who are the parties to the listing agreement? The seller and the firm. That's what I was waiting to hear right there. The seller and the firm. I know you're the one doing all the work, but it's the firm that owns the agency agreement, right? Okay, let's talk about those sellers real quick. If it is a married couple that owns property as tenants by the entirety, do you think you should get both of their signatures on this? You absolutely should. If it's tenancy by the entirety, if you don't have both of their signatures, you have nothing, because the owners have not signed on this. Similarly, if there are multiple tenants in common, you're going to need their signatures as well. What if the owner is the only name on the deed? Okay? Lisa is the only one on the deed. She's married to me. She most likely owns the property in house, starting with the letter S. Severalty, because she's the only name on the deed. She's married to me. I likely have a what? A marital right in the property, a marital interest in the property. Do you need both of our signatures?
Yes.
If you're going to convey clear title, you do. Technically, she's the only one who owns the property, so she's the only one that's obligated to sign. But remember, if she can't get my signature later when the property goes under contract, the fact is she's not going to be able to deliver clear title. She can deliver title because she's the only one that owns it. She can't deliver clear title. So what am I saying? If there are multiple, if there are spouses, get both. Get both. Okay? You're getting the listing for the firm. Let's go down to the next paragraph. What's this paragraph right here say that you've seen the working real estate agent brochure? Everybody see where I am? Terms of the agreement down there as you look through it, there's a couple of things. There's one I want to alert you to, although I don't think it's a huge deal. I told you earlier that you cannot solicit the listings, the exclusive listings of other agents, right? Okay. What if someone solicits you? What if a seller who you know is listed with another agent runs into you at a cocktail party one night and says, look, my agent is crappy. I would rather you list the property for me. What are you going to do then? Can you do a listing presentation for that client, for that party who's listed with another? Morgan says yes. Why yes?
Well, even if they're entered into an agreement, they can terminate that agreement at any time.
Okay, and who solicited who?
They solicited.
They solicited you. You can't solicit them while they're with someone else, but if they solicit you, you can go in and do a listing presentation for them, tell them what services that you can offer. Their listing expires at the end of this month, end of March, right? So what's my conversation going to sound like with them? I would be glad to list your property when you are no longer working with another agent, and there's a place in there where you can put that this agency agreement will start when the other one expires. Okay, so start April 1st. We actually have it in there. So what's important for test purposes? Don't solicit people that are listed with other agents. However, if they solicit you, yes, you can. But what's the answer to the question? You can start working with them when they're no longer exclusively listed with another party. Okay, perfect. Also, there's going to be an end date. You see the